Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Welsh Republic podcast, episode 65 today. And I am here with my guest, the Aureus Press. How are you doing today, mate?
Good. Yeah, good. Aureus Press, but yeah, Argonus is how you like to say it, so then that's all right.
Well, that's my pronunciation, dude. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you have like a Kiwi Welsh accent that's technically mixed in a way.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
You know, you just said before we started the show, you said to me you had a bit of a cold. Is everything all right, dude? Is it just a small cold or?
Yeah, it's kind of a flu, I guess, but I'm all right. Yeah, I'll be all right. A little under the weather, but could be worse.
You got any plans for this weekend?
Um, no, I'm too busy to have plans. Things wash over me in a wave of chaos, and I try to manage them best as they strike me, as the blows strike me. It's raining little daggers all the time, and I'm dancing perpetually in a field of chaos.
You
I
see
have
any
no.
you see any
Sorry.
leprechauns?
Yeah, I see them all the time, every day, all around me.
That sounds pretty trippy. But anyways, Aureus Press. So I see that like you do a lot of artwork. Tell me about your background and what made you start to get into mythology, and tell me about your background and your story.
Jeez, it's okay. My background, my story. Yeah, I was always interested in art, and I set out to be an artist. And I mean, I have arguably worked as an artist thus far. Maybe not the way I expected exactly. Yeah, I was always good at drawing and painting and stuff, and I've always been actually at least fairly good at a variety of art mediums. I was not pretty good with music, writing, drawing, painting, sculpture. Actually, I'm pretty good at too, just sort of naturally. But at the same time, having so many varied interests and hobbies means you don't necessarily become an absolute master at one or the other, you might say. Although I'm not bad either. Certainly, I don't go around calling myself an artist, let's say, but I do see a lot of people that do, and I feel like I'm a lot better than them. Not always, not to be arrogant or anything, but I'm not bad at some of these disciplines, let's say, and I'm just generally interested in them. But I went to art school to set out to be a visual artist for sure, and I had my experience there is what kind of put me off art for a while because it was confusing and crazy. And
What year was this?
Oh, this is a long time ago. Don't even remember exactly. I'm old now. I'm in my 40s, so this is when I was. What year did I go to college? When I was 17, I guess, 18. I can't remember. Whatever.
So it would have been in the 90s. Yeah, well, that was really the beginning of the fall of like Western art in the 90s and all that stuff. And now you just look at it and it's just.
Oh, no, it was gone long before that. It's certainly been this way since the popularization of modernism and postmodernism in the 50s and 60s. It was long. It was long over even by then. Really, it was pretty chaotic. I felt. I just thought I knew there would be chaos and abstraction and sort of bullshit, and even the teachers would kind of admit this is all. Every now and again, I had one teacher he would stop and say, this is all bullshit. But I expected in between to learn real skills as well. I thought, well, they have to maintain some sort of tradition of teaching art as well in the art school that I went to. And it was maybe there was a little tiny bit of that, but it was really like mostly gone, and nothing you couldn't know or learn on your own anyways. You go to college and you spend all this money and time. And so yeah, anyways, overall I had a good experience in terms of having a great time and being in a college and all that kind of fun stuff. But I didn't feel I learned anything valuable at all. And in fact, I would say it was worse than useless in terms of education. It was worse than useless because it actually put me off art for a number of years altogether. I just thought, well, this is hopeless. Like doesn't make any sense. So I wound up doing like graphic design and stuff like that for a long time. Although in between, I would still be doing commercial art, like some illustration and things like this. And a bit of writing, always on the side. I did a bit of writing as well. And then just in recent years, I decided to move focus back onto writing more, getting some books out. I'm doing now like a pulp science fiction thing.
Yeah.
Comes out every couple months, as well as other nonfiction books. So writing really is the main focus, because I can see writing is something you can do and have a bigger effect with. You're directly speaking your thoughts into other people's brains, kind of thing.
And can I just say, Argonis, that I saw before we started the show, I was looking at your book, The Dream God, and now it talks about like what if the Roman Empire pretty much survived and how it colonized space and stuff. The
Yeah.
artwork looks awesome, Matt. I think it's really well done. You really did a fantastic job in it. Like
Thanks.
when I saw that, I thought, "Wow, man, this looks epic!" You know.
Thanks. Actually, I have the original painting right here on the wall. It's not far. I can see it from where I am right now. Yeah, so I had the skills to do my own artwork. That's the thing, because like I say, I've had these varied interests for so long that I don't even like, I can do the entire package myself. I know graphic design, I know how to paint and draw, and I know how to write.
Who
So I
was
can
your favorite artist? Who was your favorite artist growing up? The one that really inspired you to draw good drawings, and the one that you really admire the most?
Favorite artist, Jesus, well, that's hard. Favorite artist. I've always thought, ever since I saw them in person, if I had to say, sort of pick an objective master who was the greatest master of all the masters in terms of his.
Is it Bob Ross? No, just kidding.
Yeah, Bob Ross. Bob Ross, lovely little guy, but I mean, Jesus, he couldn't even really paint trees. I mean, his trees were like just a dash, and there's a pine tree. It's like, no, Bob, for God's sake, just spend like 10 more minutes. No, I would say Rembrandt, especially after I saw them in person when I went to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and I thought, Jesus, this is just it's unbelievable, the actual skill he had. But in terms of who would have inspired me when I was young, it would have been fantasy artists, probably like Frank Frazetta and that. You know, when you're like a kid and you think, I want to do that, it would have been like these old magazines and things, 2000 AD, these things I'm trying to emulate and create now myself. It would have been sort of what inspired me as a kid.
Wow, that's really awesome. When he was like doing his artwork, like what advice would he give to like people who are drawing something, and like how to measure the drawings and like how to do it properly?
Who, Rembrandt?
Yeah.
Or well, he would have been part of an art guild, and he would have been the master of the guild at one point. So back in those days, this is why in my book I talk about how we should bring back guilds. And actually, there's guilds in the Dream God and all that.
What's a guild? What's a guild?
So throughout all of history, right back to Greek, Roman, Egyptian eras, it wasn't that there was like corporations and people worked that way exactly. A guild was, how can I say, it was wrapped up as, it was entirely represented a craft. So there was a guild for making shoes, a guild for making flutes, a guild for ironworkers, a guild for accountants. Everything sort of had a guild, right? So there was the Fine Art Painters Guild, which Rembrandt would have been in, and there would have been one for each country, and so forth. So they were, as a child, when you showed an aptitude for whatever skill, you would join that guild. And the younger members of like Leonardo da Vinci, all the rest of them, they would have grown up in a master's guild, doing the dog work, mixing the pigments and making the canvases and all this, and learning and watching from the master as they grew up. And so that was a system it was generational. So as well, it wasn't necessarily like an individual business or anything. It sort of was, but it was tied up even with religion. There was an esoteric element to each guild, and just like a long tradition that went back, as far back as you can go. So it was a good way, obviously, to do things, because we had, if you judge the merit of the work that was produced and so forth. I've always been a fan of the guild system. So Rembrandt would have been the master of his guild in his time. He worked his way up, and they maintained the tier of excellence for that craft. So did I answer the question? I don't know. Hopefully, I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, you did a good job. That is a very, very good answer. And what is your favorite painting out of all history? The one painting that you really love the most?
Oh, so hard to pick one. I don't know. It would be either a Rembrandt or a Turner or um, someone like that. I don't know. I haven't really
Oh,
tried to
sorry,
narrow it down to
painting.
just
Your
one.
favorite painting of all time. Painting, sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't, it'd be. I'm not sure. I couldn't just pick one. I don't think, and just say that's it. This is the best of all time.
That's all good. Mate, when I was looking at like back to your story, when I was looking at about Dream God and I was thinking, what if the Roman Empire had survived? Like in your series, how did the Roman Empire how did they manage to survive and how did they get the technology to like colonize these planets and how on earth? And do you think that if the Roman Empire in real life actually did survive, do you think they would have been able to succeed in like going space travel and maybe making interdimensional travel? Do you think they would have been able to achieve that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's a difficult question because I do believe that things. I do believe in perennialism and that things happen cyclically, and nothing. Excuse me. Nothing lasts forever. No empire or system can just sort of last forever unless it is aware of itself and intentionally changes itself as it goes, which is something I think the Egyptians did, and that's why they had so many thousands and thousands of years. It's like one of the longest civilizations that ever. But even they eventually succumbed, I guess. But I don't really go into that in that story. I assume they've taken that Egyptian route and recycled themselves in various ways. And I don't say exactly how or why they weren't destroyed by Christianity, etc. I just go from the supposition that it's the future or possibly even like the present, but um, they're advanced and they've ruling over the solar system, and each orbit of the planets is an individual sort of satrapy of what would be ancient kingdoms from that time. And just this was the part of the idea I wanted to have, so that like Neptune is being ruled by kind of, what is it? Sort of at first it was like a Persian Celtic kind of empire. And so, all these ancient, Visigoths and everything are still around and things, but they're all sort of in space. And they haven't broken the barrier of the solar system, which is something I'm getting into. I'm writing out the next parts of it now, and they're trying to do that. But there's a kind of pagan mystical element to it all as well, and they're trying to sort of manufacture the gods and bring them into reality as well. Is another part of it. It's kind of like space paganism. It's something I'm kind of an advocate for, and I believe maybe something like this can come around again. It won't be precisely the Roman Empire again, but that something that is a future to strive for, and it would be something like that. And that I think the structure and hierarchy of something like Rome works best for a long-standing, or Egypt, for a long-standing idea of an empire that has self-confidence and power in the cosmos, in the world. So, yeah. I feel like I've lost the original question a bit, but maybe that
No,
answers.
you're fine, dude. I love this. You're an artist, and I love to hear you explore, like, talk about your history. I think this story is fantastic. I think having a story where the Roman Empire survived and being able to go to planets is absolutely awesome, man. And I actually, like, a lot of people say Greek mythology, but personally, I think Greek mythology is kind of overrated. I love Roman mythology. Like, I love studying about Jupiter, Pluto, and everything like that. And the Roman Empire, I mean, the artwork they had was absolutely stunning. It was just the way how they ran their society was epic. I mean, obviously, maybe not in the end of their dynasty because they went a bit authoritarian, but just an amazing empire. Man. It's such a shame, that modern culture isn't as good as it was then.
Yeah, and also their dedication to aesthetics. I actually originally got the idea. I think when I was doing my first book, on the modern art, and I was thinking, like, what if the Romans were around today? Like the expense they went to, no expense was spared in terms of making something look good aesthetically, and being in line with what they would have thought religiously and culturally, and etc. So, you look at the amazing arches and the, the Vitruvian architecture, the Pantheon, and so forth. And like, if they had some of the ability and technology we had now, I just would I started to imagine that they would be carving Hellenic faces into asteroids and things like this, right? And that you'd have.
Oh, absolutely. It's like how a lot of conspiracy theorists say that the Nazis. There's some conspiracy theorists say that the Nazis discovered alien technology, and the Nazis actually escaped from space. There's this other thing how you have the Aztec, basically the aliens came down. There's also this thing about the Inaki, how like the Egyptians pretty much were, had aliens help them build, stuff. And then of course you got the Book of Enoch having its stories where it talks about civilizations, assisting in the days of Noah, how they built their, and dude, surely the Romans would have been able to do that too. Every society, I'm sure the Egyptians could have done it. I'm sure maybe the Greeks could have done it. I'm sure even the Mesopotamians could have done it too.
Yeah, but the idea is that they would be. You would have to have that self-confidence that we lack now to really pull it off in the grand scale and the way it has to be done. We did have it up until very recently. It feels like the West has lost its self-confidence, and we're going to have to dip back into a bit of a mini dark age or something. Hopefully not too desperate.
We will absolutely go into a dark age for a bit, and I do think that the East is rising. The East is absolutely rising, and you look at the Chinese. The Chinese, they had an amazing empire. Every race, if you think about it, whether it's been Mesopotamia, Egyptian, every human is capable of this great thing. Every race of people is capable, of potentially reaching their stars. But we have an education system that just strips us back. And I think one of the things the elite have done is they made the education system dumb us down. Like when I look at the world right now, Argonis, having to wake up in the morning, go to work and stuff like that, and like 9 to 5 jobs. I mean, that's not like you're put on this rock to pretty much do that. When you look at the olden times where they would go around exploring everywhere and just having fun and living life, that's living. The way we live now is just pretty much coming from an idea that basically comes from Babylonian like bankers' belief, the banker society we live in, which is just, it just sucks, mate.
Yeah, it's very limited right now, and it's even more so. Although their own shenanigans are catching up with them a bit. I feel like it's all becoming a bit shabby. Like they don't have the same veneer of total mastery of what they're doing anymore. You know what I mean? Like the cracks are really showing, and they're still clamping down, with authoritarian, surveillance and controlling what people think all the time. But at the same time, they just don't have the same veneer of scary excellence to fall back on to really keep people in line. So I feel there'll be a crux point where their shabby hopelessness and their false values will finally meet with their ever increasing clampdown on thought and limiting possibilities, where they are fairly all powerful still at the moment, it feels like, but I feel like there'll be a crossroads there where their shabbiness will collide with that, and finally they'll be exposed as the little wretched toadies they are.
So when you look at Christianity, for example, do you think Christianity has done a lot of good for the world, or do you think Christianity and Islam and Judaism have really been the three religions that really held the world back in many ways? And do you think the world was better when it was pagan, when it was more pagan?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. It's very difficult for me, especially because I don't like to say things absolutely, because whenever you start to do that, it feels like you can be found to be wrong. And you do have to try to be adroit and absolute about certain things. And there's no wrong in feeling something is more true than another. That's for sure. And I do try to take that route. But like say early Christianity was a seemingly somewhat good thing. It did have a unifying effect over Europe, let's say. And like certain pagan beliefs were maybe that are now really gone forever, that it's hard to even, when you read the old text, there's certain things they might say or an idea they might express that you can't even really understand in the same way, not truly. We have been even probably genetically changed mentally and biologically or whatever to have us to have certain Christian moral underpinnings, whether we like it or not. But there was, yes, a certain freedom to pagan thought, and there was less limitation. Things were less binary. You could sort of do or express ideas and things that may seem dark or that might be labeled forbidden now, quite freely. There was a greater freedom of it generally, but there was also a greater harshness as well.
Who is
So,
like out of all the advanced civilizations like Mesopotamia, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, who is the most freest one? Like the one where you could be living a luxury life and not have the government bothering you or anything like that. The one that America really should be like the West should be like.
who was the freest? Who was the freest? Well, early America was a pretty good example, but that requires, in my view, you need a certain foundation set in place to even begin to have a project like that, which they've since lost. It's materially impossible for them to carry on in what they'd set out to. And even their founding fathers knew this, and they stated this would happen very clearly. In fact, I think they thought it would happen a lot sooner than it did. But that was certainly a grand attempt at having kind of personal liberty where every man is his own king kind of a deal, which I'm not sure ever was around it quite the same way. I don't really believe anyone can be 100% free in that sense. But like, I can't think of another kingdom or period that would have focused on individual liberty as much as they did. There's freedom back in archaic periods in other ways and for other reasons. Just from simply not having things like, feminism or the depth of bureaucracy of law that we have now, which has been complicated by events over time and by really having too much luxury. That's one thing the Romans were very good at, actually, is an awareness of the avoidance of luxury, which is completely lost now. Like, nobody even thinks of this at all. This is why I think they had things like the gladiatorial combat and things like this, just to remind them of death constantly and
to show them how valuable life is. How like you only get this opportunity to, whether you do believe in that, like how valuable life is and how it can be taken away all of a sudden. And I feel one of the things that these cultures did, it showed us that life is such a precious thing, when I was talking about like how basically the 9-to-5 job just makes life meaningless. What the elite have done in the last 100 years is they pretty much, taken what is good to be human and turn us like into robots. They just want us to be like mindless robots, pretty much.
Yeah, there's definitely a runaway bureaucracy kind of thing where they just it's usually done in the name of this kind of, they wouldn't use the word luxury, but like health and safety or perpetual kind of, everything is framed in terms of how long a percentage of, lifespan you might have, or, who is being most charitable in this direction or that, or being safer, all the COVID stuff and everything. It's always done in this it comes at you with a veneer of this, of, promoting like safety, longevity, prosperity, and things like this. But it's always a backwards way to end up this enforcing or increasing this runaway bureaucracy stuff, which just totally eviscerates and completely goes against, now at this stage, everything that was foundational in, say, the likes of Roman law, which dates back to all the archaic law system, which at its root probably has paterfamilias, which is basically the essential family values core, which is the core of civilization, is family values, I would say. And so, like, if that isn't being upheld, then your system is not legitimate, in my opinion. So, and they've gone so far now as to dethrone and they no longer uphold the family values at all. So, and they're still harping on in the name of like protecting people and being safe, and even like edging us into World War III, with all the same excuses and things. It's all very devious. Everything happens by a sleight of hand these days. No one ever speaks the truth. That's something that would have happened far less in the past, especially when you had like an emperor. I know this probably goes against your libertarian values and things, but I don't know. But back when you had an outright leader, a king, an emperor, a pharaoh, and he was to blame, There's pros and cons to that system as well. You can argue, but where now we have these hidden oligarchs that control everything absolutely, that nobody even knows who they are, through a sort of fake system of democracy that exists now, which is just, whoever controls.
It's basically mostly like the royal family, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all those families that control the world.
Yeah,
mostly
generally, yeah.
But, and especially.
But people don't know that. Like the average person doesn't know that. There's no person they can. The average person isn't really aware of that. That those people, I don't think. They still think that their president or whatever actually is, calling all the shots, and he's not really.
That is very, very true. And, like corporations have been pretty much just another weapon for the elitists to use to keep everybody at bay and control them, and especially when you have televisions, ever since televisions, were invented, look at the divorce rate going up. Televisions, all they pretty much did is they made the divorce rate go up, and they're just like another, psychological weapon, because if the Nazis knew they could use this type of weapons to control people, they would have done the same thing, just like every other evil empire in society would have done.
Yeah, the television definitely was a big controller they had, and they actually nearly lost control at the early days of the internet until they really clamped down on the censorship. Is something I noticed, I think, and even still, like a lot of information leaked through that kind of messed them up, and they got scared. And it's a huge expenditure of energy on their part to keep it censored and locked down. And even then, it doesn't. I don't know how everything seems at the moment to just increase chaos, as far as I can see, across the board. And it seems like a natural event in civilizational cycles that this would happen. It's a bit of a bitter pill for those of us who can witness it and be aware of what it is and why it's happening, and be powerless to do much about it. But try to survive it, I guess. But the television was a great. Back then, like there's two sides to every story as well. Like I remember TV when I was young. There'd be like 3 channels on, and like of mostly good stuff. Like, at least it would be sort of educational and of higher quality than you get now. Like even still, if I look back to old shows and things, generally it's, good entertainment quality at least. But the flip side was they had more of a total control over it in terms of news, especially when you got your news and everyone watched the news. You were told what to think. Absolutely. And there was little room for disagreement, where the internet made it a matter of option more. And the flip side being now there's 100 channels of nothing but garbage on your television. But, it's just funny how it goes.
I know. Speaking of that, what are the biggest misconceptions that a lot of Christians have of the Roman Empire? Because a lot of Christians say that the Roman Empire was an evil empire, that they treated, people like shit, that it was authoritarian, that Caesar wasn't a good leader, and etc. What are the biggest conceptions Christians have of the Roman Empire?
Well, I mean, they can say that they were more brutal and they would like feed Christians to lions and things, and but that was true for all of history, and certainly right through the early Christian period, right through the medieval up until say even the 19th century, everyone was in general more brutal. Little kids would go and watch someone being hanged in the public square or whatever. It was that was just the way things were. And arguably we are too, as I was saying, secluded and protected from that now, where we don't, people are, and it just makes people more terrified of death and more sort of feminized and things, I think. But they can argue that, but you can right through the most of the entire Christian period, people were still also quite brutal. And authoritarian, there's always someone. I believe in hierarchy, and that there's a necessity to it, and there's always going to be some kind of, and also that there's no way to do anything without upsetting somebody. So you just have to hope that your hierarchy has somebody, a sort of philosopher king type person towards the top, who assesses things in as fair and just a way as can be done. And the structure itself maybe doesn't allow, well, like even if someone has a total, like say at the time of Caligula and that, when emperors would be sort of pronouncing themselves gods and things, they turn to events like that. But that's not so dissimilar from the Holy Roman Empire and the emperor doing the same kind of thing. Maybe he was less debauched and less crazy about it. But in terms of authoritarian total power, Christians don't really have that argument so much. They can't just say that. Maybe nowadays they can claim that they're totally living in a universalist kind of everyone's free thing, but that's only the illusion of freedom as far as I can see. And even we have even more. You're like, no one's ever been able to control what you think as much as they do today. And in fact, you look at the things like communist reactions to the past, where they hate the idea of the emperor and the king. You know, even though like all the words for the ultimate ruler throughout Europe and beyond are like Caesar, like Kaiser and Tsar and all that come from the word Caesar. So they still communists would just think in bitterness about the king and how evil it is to have a monarchy and so forth, while they turn Stalin into like the god upon the earth who kills and oppresses more people than anybody ever, and has more breadth of power than any emperor ever had before him. So this is the irony, where they don't realize that they're not getting rid of hierarchy. They're just replacing the hierarchy that existed and that developed organically and through tradition with a materialist one, a communist one, and just changing the names of who is the czar and who is the nobility. Whoever's got the guns, basically, after they've had their revolution, is the new power class. So that's what I like about the openness. And you're a libertarian guy, so I know there's certain libertarians that are aware or are advocates for monarchy, are as a system that does allow for freedom, because I'm not sure even what they say in its favor. I think economically speaking, they think it's good because it in the way it is out yet controls the markets or something. I forget the names of the people who advocate for this, but I've read about it in the past. But for my part, it's just the honesty of it, that you have your king and your nobles, etc. And you know, it's naked and honest, and there they are. And if they're really bad, you kill them, as opposed to just changing it to, oh, this is the CEO or this is the Politburo, you know, instead of the noble families or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, mate, what was the thing where the Roman Empire, you know, I'm not entirely an expert on the Roman Empire, but what was the thing that made the Roman Empire fall? Because I remember seeing like this meme where you know how you have the dollar, right? How you have the US dollar, and how the US dollar had like Jefferson on it, and like it was Jefferson, and then all of a sudden it had a bird on it. And then the Greek Empire had like a face on it too, and then it got a bird, and then the Roman Empire had a face on it, and then a bird. When you look at that type of thing, what was the thing that made the Roman Empire fall? And like, why did Rome go from being such an amazing empire to just a corrupt empire that fell to crap?
Yeah, there's two ways to look at it again. And as a perennialist, I would say that it's sort of time had come and nothing can be done. Same as you might say for America today, that its lifespan has simply been reached. This is Spengler's theory that I think has got to have some truth to it, that civilizations are like living organisms, and they have a birth in a golden age, and then a slow and painful death. And nothing. It's like when an idea has played its course. In this case, you might even be witnessing the death of Christianity in many ways, at least as we have known it. And there won't be like a new thing for people to rally around, a new value system, until a new cult or religion takes over.
Do you think that Islam is going to be like the next major religion? Because Islam, apparently they're saying, is rising, but many people say that Islam is actually dying. Like there's a lot of people leaving Islam too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's very hard to say, but Islam has already had its heyday as well, if you follow Spengler's theory. But maybe some variation of either one of these that just breaks off and changes slightly could be the new thing that sort of takes over and creates a new moral. It'll have a new foundational morals, which will be different based on whatever cataclysmic events shape us now over the next few years, few decades. You know, that'll reshape a new, stronger morality for something else, for some new variation of an old cult or new cult to kind of probably take over. I
think it will be like New Age paganism. I definitely think that like paganism is definitely making a comeback in Europe, because a lot of people becoming more Wiccan, a lot of people, like especially the Nords, are going back to like the Norse mythology beliefs. Some people are going back to Slavic beliefs, especially in Russia and Belarus, which is kind of a good thing. You know, it's a cool thing. I think
Yeah.
it is very, very cool.
Yeah, I would consider myself mostly one pagan as well. Although I still sort of like I was raised Catholic, and I don't deny that that's always with me as well. And there's elements in Christianity which which are good and unavoidable in terms of who we are and how we view the world. So I don't completely decry it either. But yeah, I think you could be right about that. But how it actually goes, how you want it to go, or how you think it's going to go, it is often not the way it actually goes. So I wouldn't make any predictions as to what exactly would happen. But that's not unlikely either. Yes, it definitely is growing. Christianity just seems to, it's tied up. I mean, in the moment, we're wrapped up in this woke cult stuff. This really is a religion and a cult, and it is drawing things in, but it just immediately destroys them or sets it against each other. It doesn't have anything for people to have a long lasting, its values are all destructive. So it's kind of a death cult. I mean, but it has proven to be quite strong. Like the average, it draws in a lot of people. They are seduced by the charms of its apparent compassion and freedoms, its fake freedoms, from freedom from gender and everything, sort of it's obviously nonsense and it's ruins lives, but it has a power. It seems to draw them in, but maybe that itself will somehow evolve into in the same way that communism evolved into Stalinism. Maybe the woke cult will evolve into something unexpected. Who knows?
Or maybe like another. Well, obviously they're becoming their own type of authoritarianism, especially with climate change beliefs. Like the COVID narrative and all that stuff. They're already creating their own type of just how corporatism created its own type of fascism through slave debt and also money wise and using the banking system to control people. That's just another form of control.
Yeah, in terms of systems, even economic systems and things that we can predict based on what has happened before, just the breadth of chaos and calamity that is growing as we speak. And not, you got, as you say, you got COVID, you got these random likely lab produced diseases washing over the earth. We've got various countries at war. We are in a world war really as we speak, even though it's sort of partial Cold War, World War. I don't know what you would call it.
Many people think that, many people actually say it feels like, COVID back in 2020 was the beginning of World War III. Some people do say that. There actually are some conspiracy theorists who say that. What's your thoughts on that when they say that?
Yeah. Arguably it's been really going on it feels like there was only the tiniest little blip of sort of pretended or attempted peace between, say, Russia and America, between the former Cold War and what we have now. And it seemed like maybe a decade or two of maybe we can get along before, I think certainly since the color revolutions that they tried in the Eastern Europe and in Ukraine and the rest, there's been an antagonism for sure. Based on these geopolitical things and the craziness of the American leadership and their desire to police the world and all this kind of thing. I don't know. But I think it really started, I think, quite a long time ago. You can argue ever since there's been fighting in Ukraine, I would think maybe you could argue it started then, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about that, mate, what is your favorite mythology and what is your favorite creation story out of any mythology? There is Norse, Greek, Egyptian, any of them.
Well, I like all those a lot. The Irish as well. The Celtic myths are really amongst the most unusual and quite interesting.
What do you like about the unusual side about it compared to other mythologies?
I'm not even sure how to put it into words. I mean, the Irish one is really strange, and I just know when it resonates with me. So for years as a Christian, you'd go in, I love going to a Latin mass and all that, and it's great, particularly because it's very Roman, I think. But when you hear what they're actually saying and you hear the actual myths from that part of the world, it does not resonate. The names, the events, I've never found it particularly appealing or interesting or anything. But even the Irish ones, say, which are so unusual, they're hard to even wrap your mind around, yet there is a resonation and you feel, you're just drawn to it, I guess. But overall, I have to say the Hellenic myths, the Greek and the Roman, are the most, and like I love the Nordic stuff as well. I'm very fond of it. I'm a Northern European. I should arguably
About the like Benugan the basically and like the trolls and like
feel
the
that. Yeah.
whole nine realms, Asgard, that like Asgard, you know, Valhalla, and also Midgard. It's just really cool, man. Really, really cool.
Yeah, it is very cool, and yeah, you feel that it resonates. You like want to know more, and so that's I never did get that from the biblical stuff, I must say.
Exactly.
Yeah,
My favorite mythologies, mate, that I love Slavic mythology because I play the game The Witcher, and The Witcher, like I really love like that aspect to it, like the how basically the god of like was how like the music in it and how they pretty much was walking around and the way they dress is pretty awesome. I'm a big fan of Slavic, big fan of Roman mythology. I love that. I love Japanese mythology. I also like
yeah,
Persian
that's
mythology.
cool too. Yeah,
Persian
yeah,
mythology is awesome, which is also pretty cool too.
yeah. Egyptian, yeah, I love Egyptian as well. But I sort of try to think in my mind, and I practice a kind of Greek Roman one because all I can say is it resonated the most. There's the most record of we have the most literature existing still on it. Sadly, the Norse stuff was kind of lost and reconstructed, and we have to piece it together and all that. That's probably the greatest tragedy in regarding that one. And like philosophically, I call myself a Platonist. I consider myself a Platonist, so that ties in well with that, and that allows you as well to be a little bit Christian, a little bit Greek pagan, or any kind of pagan you want. It's sort of I know it sounds kind of new agey and fruity in that sense, but it it's like a mathematical, rational premises for God and faith. So I do Plotinus and Iamblichus and all that kind of thing. I'm a big fan of that.
Who's your favorite out of the Irish gods? The one that you really like the most?
I don't like, yeah. See, I'm interested in the Irish pantheon and myths, but I don't practice that or even know. Like, I don't even know as much as I should about it. I guess again, a lot of the information has been lost. But I like Mananan MacLear, the sea god guy. Oh, what's that noise? Is that you or me? Oh, that's my alarm. Sorry. And who else do I like? Oh, I like the Lug. What I find interesting about Lug is the similarities in his. Lug is the sun god in Irish, like one of the main gods, and there's a lot of similarities between him and Mithras and the Roman Mithras cult. They were both born of a stone, and they both have relations to the sun and stuff. A lot of interesting crossovers there.
The god of the death in Irish mythology is very cool. He's the horn god. The horn god, what is the horn god's name? And also Dunga. You got the Dunga, the all-father god is pretty cool in it too.
The horn god I usually think of as Cernunnos, the god of the hunt. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's cool. That was cool. I'll tell you what, mate. I'd love to see in a God of War game Kratos fight him. That would be pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you don't hear much about Celtic paganism, but it is very interesting, and it has some relations to the Roman. Even there's an amazing old what do you call it? Like a relief sculpture. I think it was from France, Celtic France, and it has on it. Is it Cernunnos? Mercury.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah, it has this one sculpture. It has Cernunnos, I think, emptying out a bag of gold, but over his shoulder is like Mercury and Apollo, and this kind of interesting crossover paganism stuff. I like all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, mate, do you have any book that you have coming up that's like a new story, a new thing that you're working on?
Yes, I do. I have. Well, so I've got my Aegeon magazine thing is coming out every 2 months now. It's science fiction compendium, short stories, mostly mine, but also contributing stories, and it's illustrated. So that's what was mostly taking up my time lately. The 3rd issue is coming out now in a week or two. Well, probably 2 weeks actually from now. But I'm also working on a nonfiction book on the paganism and religious stuff, and another book that is like a cross between fiction and nonfiction that is weird, and it's kind of like it's sort of like thus spake Zarathustra in a way, but not. It's not like that exactly. But it's sort of a story of an Egyptian high priest who's like relating a story to a scribe about about their times and how they run their civilization in a way. So it's kind of like but it's like mostly philosophy and stuff about archaic civilization, as well as being sort of pseudo nonfiction, or pseudo fiction. So I'm not sure how to categorize that one, but yeah, those are the things I'm working on.
That sounds really, really cool, mate. You know, who do you think was the greatest leader in the Roman Empire history ever?
Well, you can never discount Caesar, but big fan of Augustus. Augustus is arguably the greatest statecraft. Obviously, I love Marcus Aurelius, but you can't. Caesar was obviously extremely foundational, but maybe overall, I'd have to say Augustus.
A lot of people seem to say that Caesar was this bad guy. Like a lot of Christians will say that. But what is your opinions when they say that about him?
Oh, it's just whatever. Let them whine if they want. But there's no like bloodless history where someone wasn't opposed to somebody else. Christians still borrowed in their civilization when they began anew.
They copied a lot of pagan beliefs. Like Jesus originally comes from Aureus. I've actually seen conspiracy videos where pagans pretty much try to disprove Christianity, and they say that Jesus comes from the story of like Horus or like Thor or like something like that. The sun god. And you look at like all the beliefs that like if you're someone who's an atheist and you believe like in human evolving from monkeys, like a lot of people say that the sun is such a powerful figure. A lot of people will say that the sun was pretty much the thing that caused a lot of people to believe in these things, because back then in that time when humans didn't know how to eat or something, people would think that when the sun is going down, that it was the end of the world pretty much. Like here in New Zealand, a lot of Polynesians back in the ancient times would think that when the sun was going to go down, a lot of them thought that it was the end of the world. You get what I mean by that?
Oh yeah, the sun is really a god if you think about it. I mean, if you think about the power of the sun and what it is, you may as well consider it a god. It is that strange and powerful a thing. That was the dying words of Turner, the greatest landscape painter of all time. He said the sun is God, and I guess obviously Akhenaten thought that, and various others. The Mithras cult had something to say about that, and it is a powerful old thing, the sun. But yeah, the Christians did borrow a lot of just like adopt a lot of pagan stuff, just copied it over, like copied and pasted. There's a lot of Platonism in there, a lot of Greek philosophy, all the talk of logos and that. All the best parts really are from paganism or pagan thinkers, I think. Again, I'm not anti-Christian. I don't want to get into that kind of thing. Other people are really against it, and I'm not.
Have you gone in debates with people about it before? Like,
no, because I avoid that, because I don't agree with completely denouncing Christ, even though I'd be more on the pagan side. I do not believe in that they're entirely wrong, and there has been things about it that were good. It did have a unifying effect, which is part of the universalism, you might say, which is now kind of tearing it apart because it's too universalist and too not discriminating enough, sort of not all the harshness has been leached out of it. There's no real they don't really obey their own rules anymore, let's say. They just kind of like, if a rule conflicts with any kind of woke concept, if a rule sounds mean, they have to change it now. They don't just actually abide by them. Some people do.
Yeah, true Christianity is definitely dead, especially, our Putin. Putin pretty much said that America has not been a Christian nation like nearly for 70 years now. And like a lot of the West has gone that way too. Like New Zealand is definitely becoming less Christian. Australia is, and Canada is. It's just not the same as it used to be.
No, it's not. They have a new religion, which is really an odd one. They're not even aware that they're in a new cult. It's very strange. I'm not sure how people can have so little self-awareness about what they're doing, but they're still wrapped up. They get wrapped up very easily. The average person is very easily, if you wrap a story in this compassionate message, let's say, if you can prove or make them think that something has been cruel, unnecessarily cruel and cause pain and hardship for people, then they just go screaming, running the other way for whatever offers them an easy solution that is sort of painless and just offers endless hugs and cuddles in a marshmallowy world where you bounce off things without causing damage to anything. And it's a fabrication and it's childish. But that's kind of really the state of modern popular Christianity. It seems to be just like a little hug party where everyone lives forever, no matter what they do. And I don't know. It just seems very silly. It doesn't have what's even to it. Like, what are they? There's no
Yeah, what
culturally
is your
unifying thing.
thoughts
The past has
on
become evil.
transhumanism? What is your thoughts on transhumanism, where they're basically trying to, merge man with machine and the mark of the beast, and like the New World Order policy, where they're trying to make man into God? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, oddly enough, I'm not as opposed to it as others in that I'm opposed to it in the sense that they try to do these days, because it seems to be they're just trying to like find a way for a man to give birth to a baby, or like to grow fetuses in like a plastic in a plastic pot, or silly stupid crap like this. Where as a fan of science fiction, I wouldn't mind if they put someone's brain in a giant robot that could like zap people with lightning or something. So one of these grand kind of science fiction themes, stories of the evil scientists from the 50s. A grand project that was like truly astounding, or like an AI that was really like a deep thought kind of thing that would like ponder the secrets of the universe, instead of like a new way to make shitty illustration or whatever they do now, NFTs and crap. Everything gets perverted and used these days for some kind of petty, meaningless, superficial thing, it feels like. And any big idea scares the normies so much that they flee. So I'm not de facto opposed to transhumanism if they would have a grand scheme and plan of something large, but generally they'll just, like I said, find a way for a man to have a baby or something ridiculous, and it'd just be like, or grow meat out of nothing that you can eat. That'll be like awful, biological experiments like this, growing human organs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it would definitely mess with what being, human is. When you look at all the empires, mate, in history, what do you think was the greatest empire that ever lived? Like, was it Mesopotamia? Was it Roman? Or was it Egyptian? Or any others?
Well, they all have their qualities, but obviously I'm a fan of the Roman above all. I think I have to say, with the mix of, even though they adopted most of their great stuff from the Greek, well, so maybe I have to say the Greek. Really, actually, I should say the Greek, because they were the creators of so much originality, so much of value.
A lot of
that you
people
consider.
though say like actually Mesopotamia was the one that really like. What's your thoughts on the people who say that actually Mesopotamia was the one that like put the world forward, especially with the wheel and the creation of like the stars and like writing the stars down?
Sumerians and all that. Yeah, they did originate, like, say, language and that, and a lot of stuff for sure they did. Yeah. Yeah, there was a great creative leap there as well. But in terms of things I truly admire, the philosophy and the geometry and the art, the Greeks took another leap forward that was just a creative period that was just completely amazing. And still, when you look at the works of these, authors and thinkers of that time, it's absolutely, it'll change your life to read them even now. So whatever was going on there, I have to say that's my favorite. I think, yeah, I must say the Greeks, just because the Romans were like an extension of that anyways. But I have a great fondness for the Egyptian and its longevity as well, and some of the stuff, the monumentalism of them and their crazy shit as well. But yeah, I say the Greeks.
Anyways, thank you for coming on my show, mate. Actually, before we finish off, what do you have any quote for anybody from a famous philosophical person, like from the Roman times, for like motivation to help their day?
Oh, let me think. Like a quote, motivation to help their day. In terms of, let me think now. No,
from a Roman poet.
Like Horace, the Odes of Horace. I wish I had my little Odes of Horace here now. Not really off the top of my head, like to actually give a quote. I know, like, I think of, if you wanted to think of in terms of trying to come to terms with how they viewed the world, in this pagan, it's a slightly what would seem an alien pagan view to the world and be hard to grasp now. You can think of the story of Caesar when he was kidnapped by pirates and they tied him to the mast of the ship or whatever, and he spent the whole time telling them, you've got to take me back. I'm Caesar. I'm going to crucify every one of you or something like that. And he managed to convince them and talk them into taking him back. And then he did turn around and crucify them all. So take that with you to work and dwell on that.
No worries. Where can people find you?
Twitter, Telegram, Facebook. There's a small YouTube channel as well. If you just look up Aureus Press, all those should come up, I think. On Facebook, it's still called Traditionalist Western Art. That's what I named it from when I first took to social media to peddle my first book, which is all about that. And I've since obviously branched off into other things. So I tried to change, but Facebook won't let me change the name. I don't know why. So I'm on all those platforms though, yeah. And I have a website, www.aureus-press.com. And there's one for the Aegeon science fiction. It's aegeon/sci-fi.com as well.
Thank you for coming on my show. It was an honor to have you. And everybody, please check out this guy's, book, The Dream God. It's a fantastic book. Brilliant. It talks a lot about Roman mythology, and he does very good artwork. Thank you for coming on my show, Aureus Press. It was wonderful having you. And thank you for everybody joining the Welsh Republic Podcast, episode 65. I will see you next week for more episodes. And please remember to like and subscribe. Share this video if you can. God bless you all. Have a nice day. Enjoy. Bye.